Hey, and welcome to this Freaky Friday edition of Liquid Lunch on Newsmax TV. I'm John Tobacco. Someone out there in America who knows I'm on air right now decides to call me right at the stroke of noon Eastern. We have a whopper of a Freaky Friday edition of Liquid Lunch for you today. We're coming to you live as we do every single day from noon to 2 Eastern from the Question Tequila Studios in downtown Manhattan. Before getting into our great Freaky Friday show today, let's take a quick look down the street to the New York Stock Exchange, where the Dow is up about 70 today, right up, leaning up against the edges of breaking into 29,000. You know, a couple of weeks back, I said if it closed on a Friday above 28, we could see 30 by year end. We're getting close. A close above 29 today by some stretch would be amazing, and we may see that Santa Claus New Year run going into next week. So keep your seatbelts buckled. And if you don't need the cash, I wouldn't be doing any year-end profit taking right now. Pay the taxes in 2021 and let it ride into the 20s, the roaring 20s as they're calling them now. Bitcoin at 7,200. I'm a little nervous here. Under 7,000, trapdoor down to 5,500. But through the holidays, maybe people are getting out of stocks, taking some profits, deploying that cash into Bitcoin. Could be some upside at these levels. Upside happens every day when I'm joined by Frank Morano, my co-host, my managing editor, and today we are so lucky in the leadoff spot to have Elias Husamadeen with us. He is the president of the Correction Officers Benevolent Association right here in New York. Thank you very much, Elias, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So much craziness going on out there with impeachment and all this other stuff that, you know, lost in the weeds is our criminal justice system is kind of going off the rails in many ways. And you lead a union here in one of the, you know, the capital of the world, as they call it, that has to keep all these inmates in line, has to keep the court system safe, has to keep judges safe. All this stuff that your guys have to do. And we're seeing across the country now, it seems to become more and more prevalent that they're going easier and easier. They want to open the jails, let people free, no cashless bail. What are the effects on all this stuff from your perspective? You run one of the biggest correction unions in the country.
I think that it has an effect across the board. Right now in New York City, we have 5,000. As of this morning, we have 5,900 inmates in the entire New York City jail system. And that number's about to go down because of bail reform, because we're about to release even more. I think that, you know, when you start talking about, we call it criminal justice reform. In New York City, the only one that they're reforming is the bail and emptying out the jails. So I'm not quite sure how that fit in criminal justice reform. As far as bail reform is concerned, it's something that is going to affect certain communities much more than it will affect other communities. It's going to make certain communities much less safe than other communities by letting these guys out and the judges not having the ability to actually post a bail, give them a bail, and having to have to let them go.
Right. To me, in some aspects, it's like criminal justice unformed, because there's just no more crimes anymore. You know, everything, you can get locked up and released before you blink.
Well, we you know, I question reform. Reform usually means that you're making something better. At this particular point, if you go outside and I decide to take your Apple or take your phone from you, and as long as it's a non-violent crime, even if the police arrest you, the judge cannot set a bail, even if you have a prior. So each time you get a new phone, I can come and take your phone. Wow. Each time Miss Georgiana goes shopping with her social security check, go to the supermarket, when she gets in her building and I get in there and I take her money and I take her bag, as long as it's nonviolent, guess what? When I go before the judge, even if I have priors, the judge can't set a bail. So I'm not quite sure where we're going and why we even call it reform.
So Elias, we're just days away here in New York State from instituting bail reform. In the last few years, we've seen New Jersey implement bail reform. We've seen Alaska implement bail reform. And there are movements in a lot of other states around the country to do what New York is doing and what New Jersey's done. From where you stand, because the bail reformers all blame you as the reason why there's even bail in the country in general. They say if the corrections unions weren't so powerful and the bail bondsman industry wasn't so powerful, then we'd have bail reform all over the place. In the states that have done this, do we have any idea how it's worked out?
Well, look, in New Jersey, they did it right next door in New Jersey. But the one thing that they did not do They did not take away the discretion of the judge to impose bail. They still left that. Here in New York City, they completely just took, here in the state of New York City, they completely took that right away from the judge.
Disqualified.
So
the judge can't say, wait a minute. He didn't hit her with the gun.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
so it's classed technically non-violent.
Yes.
But he threatened her with the gun.
Yes.
And I don't feel good about letting this guy just go roam the streets because he may go back and hit the old lady with the gun in the first place now because she's a witness or whatever. And the non-violent criminal can turn into a violent criminal pretty quick.
Like I said, my daughter, or any of our daughters, if someone's stalking her and he's arrested, guess what? The judge can't set a bail. Judge can't do anything.
Right.
So exactly where New York City is going, look, here's my conspiracy theory. In New York City, jail reform, bail reform is about real estate. There's 420 acres of Rikers Island that they want to repurpose. There's this jail on Atlantic Avenue, 275 Atlantic Avenue. We just closed the Brooklyn House.
Yep.
It's a beautiful piece of real estate. They just
Not
opened,
if you're on the inside of it, I can tell you that. The Brooklyn House is not beautiful.
TD Bank, Michael's, all of these things, that's never going to be a jail. Although they said it's going to be a jail, trust me, it's never going to be a jail. And probably within the next 6 months, they'll start destroying it, tearing it down, and turning it back into some type of high rise.
One of the things we've also seen nationwide is this movement towards electing these criminal justice reformers as DAs. In Brooklyn, we have Eric Gonzalez. In Philadelphia, they have Larry Krasner. In San Francisco, they have this son of a couple of cop killers who doesn't want to prosecute any crimes. How has that worked out in cities like, say, Baltimore, for instance?
Honestly, I don't know. The reality is, for me, New York City is the reality for me. And the reality for me is that we already see certain crimes already going up. We already see gun crimes going up. We already see crimes in the subways going up. We already see robberies going back up. We already see rape going back up. And despite anyone saying that, New York City is safer, it is safer than it was 10 years, 20 years ago. But the reality is it's not as safe as it was yesterday. And once all of these people are released, it's not going to be as safe. And like I said, there's certain communities, certain African-American Latino communities are actually going to get hit the hardest. Be honest with you, there's certain communities that's never really been hit with crime.
These recidivists, most people that are in jail are recidivists, right?
Absolutely.
That are incarcerated
Absolutely.
are recidivists.
Yes.
So now these recidivists who have 2 or 3 crimes under their belt already, nonviolent, now they do another crime and they go, no bail, go ahead, go out, come back in a few weeks if you show up for court, we'll give you Met tickets. Right? They're giving them Met tickets to show up for court. But where are they going? They're going back to the communities. They're going into the low-income communities where they're going to be back in action very shortly.
Because here's the reality. Here's a real number. At least 40,000 New Yorkers are rearrested 2 to 7 times each year for the same crime. So we're talking about bail reform, we're talking about jail reform, but we can't even seem to help these 40,000 people who don't seem to be able to stay out of jail either way you look at it.
Elias, we are so eager to have you on all the time because you're such a great advocate for New York's boldest and the people that actually have an incredibly dangerous job and have to do it under really tough circumstances, including getting urine thrown at them, getting attacked repeatedly, and then being villainized as the bad guys in every single jail film that has ever existed,
right.
No matter what the era is. But I am curious to get your expertise on something that doesn't involve your members, but it does involve a jail, a federal jail, the MDC in Brooklyn. We saw Jeffrey Epstein kill himself. Right. A lot of questions about the behavior of those that were guarding him and the culpability of the prison administration there. From 5,000 feet in the air, from what you've seen of this case, do you think there's anything suspicious going on here?
My honest opinion was then, and it is now, is that we have a similar situation. We had a young man that just tried to commit suicide. And the reality is, one thing I said was he should have never been in a maximum security jail. You knew he had mental issues. You knew he attempted to kill himself. Why would you not put him in a jail that has mental health unit, mental health facility? I think the same thing with this guy. The reality is, as correction officers, yes, we're not. We watch them every 30 minutes. We watch them every 15 minutes.
But none of
the
that
reality
happened.
is,
None of
if
that
someone
happened here.
wants to kill themselves, even if they did,
Right.
when someone wants to kill themselves, they're going to kill themselves.
I hear you on that. Elias, we had the chief psychologist from the MDC on here, and he said the first signal that someone's going to try to kill himself is they tried it already. So Epstein allegedly tried it once before.
Right.
You mentioned your conspiracy theory that the elimination of jails here in New York is really a real estate play. I'm thinking you're probably right, by the mayor and his buddies in big real estate. My conspiracy theory is on duty called in sick, and there were 2 subs in that night. The logs that were supposed to be kept every 30 minutes, they forgot because they fell asleep. And the video cameras that are looking down the hallways there where those cells are, they just happened to malfunction that night. To me, I've been saying for a while, it sounds like the Clinton cartel. But does this many coincidences happen in the facilities you work in? Not in the city, I bet.
No, not that many coincidences, but the reality is, look at who we're talking about, and I try not to spend too much time talking about him and others like him. The reality is that correction officers usually are the ones that's held responsible when these things happen, and the reality is, like I said, if I watch him, if my watch sheet says that I have to watch him at 11. And 11:15 and 11:30. Well, guess what he can do between 11 and 11:15?
Someone on the show had said that they use special sheets in these cells, that they're tearaway sheets, that they're not capable of snapping your neck, that they would break away in these suicide cells.
Inmates have traditionally used sheets, either the ripping it apart, the end of it, the whole sheet. The kid that tried to kill himself in our jail used a sweater. There's so many things that they can use. When they come in, we take their shoestrings. They come in and we take their belts. We take everything that we think might be able, but at the end of the day, I don't want to sound like a broken record. He was going to kill himself regardless.
Elias, here in New York, they've largely done away with punitive segregation, and that's something that is spreading around the country. That's saying, especially for youthful offenders, there's never a situation where they should be, as a 13, 14, 15-year-old person, thrown into solitary confinement. People say that's inhumane. How's that worked out so far in New York?
Well, so far we're still fighting with the Speaker of the City Council, who actually don't seem to think there should be any jails. But as far as punitive here's my take on that. We have young soldiers, 20, 21 years old, in Iraq, in different places, defending our freedom, in what we call foxholes.
Yep.
And they're there for days at a time, weeks at a time, and they come back home, and they're productive residents or citizens, and we take someone who cuts someone in the face and give him 150 stitches and say that it's going to screw up his brain or his mind.
His brain's
but I got
screwed
about
up.
100 more. I got correction officers, inmates, and civilians who have been cut, stabbed, slashed, urine and feces by these people. No one really wants to tell us exactly what it is that we should do with them. I'm proposing that we create an entire Bellevue hospital situation and just put them in there and let them, just put them in there.
We like to bring on the guests that know where the rubber meets the road. This guy is representing over 5,000 correction officers. If anybody knows what's happening in the criminal justice system, it's him. I want to thank Elias Husamadeen for joining us today. Great show coming up a little later. India Everett's going to be here. Hillary Kramer's going to be talking about how to make millions, all that and more right after this.